All right, let's jump right into this explainer and finally shatter all that shame and those persistent myths surrounding why we put off the things that actually matter most to us. Look, if you have ever stared at a looming deadline, feeling this absolute pit of dread in your stomach while simultaneously mindlessly scrolling through social media, well, you are in exactly the right place. Today, we're taking a fascinating look under the hood at the biology, the psychology, and most importantly, the actual solutions to the procrastination puzzle. And that brings us to the agonizing question literally every procrastinator asks themselves as they watch yet another deadline just fly right by. Why on earth do we intentionally do things that we know are going to harm us in the long run? I mean, it feels completely irrational, right? We're smart, capable people, and yet we find ourselves trapped in this bizarre cycle of avoidance, watching our goals slip away while doing things that don't even make us happy in the moment. First things first, we need to accept a stark reality. You are probably not just lazy. Actually, scratch that. You almost certainly aren't. Laziness is characterized by a total lack of energy and general apathy. You just don't care. Procrastination, on the other hand, is active avoidance. It's high stress. Ironically, it usually means you care far too much. You're likely experiencing this intense, stressful avoidance precisely because you care so deeply about the outcome and you're terrified you won't live up to your own ridiculously high standards. Author Mark Manson really hits the nail on the head when it comes to this psychological block. He explains that our minds treat tasks we perceive as threatening, difficult, or somehow tied to our self-worth as emotional problems, not time management ones. You don't procrastinate because you don't know what to do. You procrastinate because you don't feel like doing it. Your brain is actively trying to protect you from those negative feelings of dread or incompetence. So, biologically speaking, the crucial point here is that when you face a really daunting task, your brain's amygdala actually kicks off a literal fear response. This little almond-shaped cluster of neurons identifies the difficult task as a genuine threat. It releases adrenaline, and it completely overpowers your rational, long-term planning brain. It demands immediate stress relief. Basically, your body is reacting to a looming spreadsheet the exact same way it would react to a wild animal chasing you. Writer Tim Urban hilariously translates this biological battle into a whole cast of characters living in your head. You've got the rational decision maker who's trying to steer the ship, but then the instant gratification monkey constantly steals the wheel because he only cares about what is easy and fun right this very second. And this monkey absolutely runs the show until the terrifying panic monster finally wakes up at the 11th hour, which happens to be the only thing the monkey is actually afraid of. And that whole internal hijack, that is exactly why you end up in what Tim Urban calls the dark playground. And let's be real, this isn't actual fun. This is that weird place where you're mindlessly scrolling on your phone or suddenly deciding you desperately need to deep clean your kitchen oven, all with this looming sense of dread. You aren't doing your work, but you aren't enjoying your free time either, because the air is just thick with guilt and anxiety. Now, we have to acknowledge that for some folks, this biological battle is significantly harder. For those with ADHD, Dr. Tracy Marks explains there's an actual physical barrier compounding the issue. Basically, there is a massive supply chain shortage in dopamine transport proteins. This means the brain simply doesn't get the proper chemical signals to reinforce productive behaviors, so it literally prevents the brain from feeling satisfied by effort. So it's not a willpower thing at all. It's a dopamine transport issue. But honestly, even without ADHD, this lack of dopamine turns into a vicious cycle for all of us. As we constantly seek out cheap digital thrills, our brains get flooded with dopamine. To adapt to this overwhelming, unnatural stimulation, your brain physically turns down the volume on its dopamine receptors. It's called downregulation. Over time, you build up a complete tolerance, which totally destroys your motivation and makes hard, focused work feel physically impossible. This comparison from HustleCore makes it crystal clear what we're actually sacrificing here. Modern algorithms have basically recalibrated us to crave immediate, effortless pleasure. But in doing so, we are completely starving ourselves of satisfaction. Satisfaction is delayed, It requires friction and real effort, but the feeling lasts. By choosing the easy distraction every single time, we're trading deep, lasting contentment for a fleeting hit of dopamine that just leaves us feeling empty. Okay, so how do we fix the whole shebang? Well, the answer is definitely not trying to magically manifest David Goggins-level willpower. The research is incredibly clear on this. The biggest driver of behavior change is environment design. You need to manicure your surroundings to make your bad habits incredibly difficult and your positive actions completely inevitable. Seriously, if you want to stop scrolling, put your phone in another room. Make the path of least resistance align with your actual goals. And if you want to truly reset that damaged reward system, you might need to commit to a dopamine detox. By identifying your low-effort, high-reward digital pacifiers and removing them entirely for 3 to 14 days, you force your brain through a temporary withdrawal. I know it sounds tough, but this discomfort is literally your brain upregulating its receptors. As they heal, discipline and effort are going to start feeling natural and rewarding again. Now, while your brain is healing, and this is a real game changer for ADHD learners in particular, we can artificially bypass our lack of motivation by injecting any dull task with Dr. Mark's 4 crucial factors. If you can make a task interesting, urgent, challenging, or novel, you can jumpstart your internal engine. Go work at a new coffee shop for novelty, or maybe challenge a friend to see who can finish a spreadsheet faster to add interest and urgency. One incredibly simple way to manufacture that urgency and challenge right now is the Pomodoro technique. By committing to work for just 25 minutes of unbroken focus, you create an immediate, pressing deadline. The finish line is always right there in front of you, which wakes up that panic monster just enough to get you moving, but without completely overwhelming your nervous system. But I know exactly what some of you are thinking. What if you're so paralyzed by perfectionism or overthinking, like Mark Manson's fan who spent 11 months researching without taking a single real step, that you can't even convince yourself to start a 25-minute timer? What do we do when the friction to just begin feels entirely insurmountable? Enter the do something principle. This completely flips how we think about getting started. We usually wait around to feel motivated before we take action, right? But the truth is, action is actually the cause of motivation. Taking any tiny micro action generates the emotional momentum you've been waiting for. It proves to your brain that you don't ever need to feel ready to take that first step. Productivity expert Oliver Burkeman champions a very similar vibe with his 2-minute rule. Just pick one tiny task that you can finish in 2 minutes. Open the Word document and type the title. Put on your running shoes. Literally just do the thing, cross it out, and let the sheer momentum of that completed microtask carry you forward right into the next one. Eventually, though, we have to face reality. As the Begin a New Life framework and Berkman's tough love constantly remind us, avoiding a difficult task, postponing a career move, or putting off a hard conversation, that is still making a choice. Not deciding is a decision. You are choosing the consequences of inaction, and you must ultimately accept the trade-offs and the problems of the life you're actively choosing by doing nothing. And if you need a little perspective to, shake you awake, take a look at Tim Urban's slightly terrifying life calendar. It visualizes the average 90-year human lifespan in a finite number of weeks, one little box for every week. Looking at this really hits home that the boxes are running out. We do not have endless time to wait for the perfect moment or the perfect wave of motivation to start chasing the things that matter to us. I just love this profound duality from Rabbi Simcha Bunim to kind of center us here. He reportedly carried 2 notes in his pockets. One said, "For my sake the world was created," and the other, "I am but dust and ashes." It so beautifully balances our immense, limitless cosmic potential with our fleeting, finite mortality. It urges us to use our precious, limited energy intentionally, rather than actively trying to avoid our own lives in the dark playground. So I'm going to leave you with this final provocative thought as we wrap up. Knowing your brain's biology, understanding the trap of easy dopamine, and physically seeing the ticking clock of your own life calendar, what are you still putting off? And more importantly, what tiny 2-minute action will you take right this very second to finally break free? Don't wait for motivation. Just do something.